Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm your host, Mark O'Brien, a business director at CM First Group. I want to thank everyone for registering for today's webinar, which is entitled Hosting IBM I Applications in the Cloud. And today you're going to hear from a couple of industry-leading rehosting experts. First up, we're going to have Patrick Schutz, who's the VP of Application Management for Abacus Solutions, who is a rehosting leader, especially around rehosting for the IBM I platform. He'll provide a great overview on what it means to move responsibility for your CA2E repository from internal resources to an external hosting company or even to the cloud. Then John Rhodes, CTO and Managing Director of CM First Group, will talk about some of the factors for CA customers for them to consider rehosting their hardware, and why CM First is partnering with Abacus for this part of the business. So some housekeeping details here. You can keyboard questions if you look at your GoToWebinar console on the right side there. We'll gather those, and following the two speakers and some poll questions, we will have a Q&A session for everyone in the audience. So first, we've got a poll question, the first of 4 audience polling questions about today's webinar. It is, what version of CA2E are you on? And each person, you can select one option: 8.7, version 8.6, 8.5, 8.1, or older than 8.1. We'll give people about 45 seconds or so to respond. Second question is, what IBM I operating system or OS are you currently on? So IBM I OS 7.3 is the latest GA. There's also 7.2, 7.1, and even some 6.x or even 5.x people out there. And could we see the results of the second poll question?
We have about 33% in 7.2, 42% is 7.1, and 17% in 6.x, and 8% 5x or below. Okay,
so vast majority on 7.2. And the first question about version of CA2E, you hold that one up.
We had about half at 46% at 8.7, about 8% at 8.6, 23% at 8.5, and 0 at 8.1, and 23% older than 8.1.
Okay, cool.
I'll take it over. I just wanted to take a few minutes to talk about why we are partnering with Abacus and what the CM First perspective is on hosting applications in the cloud, what we've seen among our customers and people we talk to. And I think it really comes down to, as we've been talking to customers that are trying to modernize their applications, which is really our business, we're into helping folks that are on 2E and Plex take those applications forward. And a lot of times people have told us, when we ask what their vision is, they say, well, eventually we want everything to run on the cloud. And you start seeing people that are obviously in a traditional model, which is very common 10 years ago or even 5 years ago or even maybe 2 years ago, everything is on premise. You see them start to look at, hey, we got to move stuff out to the cloud because a number of reasons. One is we got other applications like Salesforce or like CRM type systems or Oracle that's running in the cloud. We got to integrate with that. Or that's just the way the industry is going, and we want to focus on what we do best, which was develop software. We're starting to see a shift of folks that are going from this on-premise to some variation of cloud, and that's where I think a company like Abacus really has a lot of value to add for this shift. That they're one of the few companies that offer an IBM I focused offering. So as people are moving to modernize their applications, I think it also makes sense to modernize their data center. And so that's where we think it's a really good partnership between CM First and Abacus. So Patrick will be talking a lot more about that. But some of the specific reasons we hear from customers on why they're moving in this direction is, I think first and foremost is focus. do you want to be in the data center business, or do you want to be in the application business? And if the answer is we want to be in the application business, we want to develop proprietary application to give us competitive advantage, then the hardware side of things becomes less important. And maybe that makes sense to shift that focus off to somebody else that just focuses on that. Some other possibilities are around global applications and response time. It can make sense to partner with somebody that has points of presence in different areas that can make things very, very fast, responsive. I think integration with other cloud-based apps, I kind of touched on that, things like Salesforce and other applications, that's where things are moving. So to really integrate with those, it can make sense to have your other applications on the cloud as well. So I think that's what we're hearing really on the direction. And yeah, I'd like to turn things over to Patrick to really get into the details of their solution and how it can work. So Patrick, I'll turn things over to you, if that's okay.
Sounds great. Hello, everybody. Patrick Schutz here at Abacus. Hopefully I'll be able to show you my screen here. Show my screen. Let me know if you guys are seeing this.
There we go.
Okay, great. Well, once again, Patrick Schutz over at Abacus. Appreciate everybody's time. Hopefully y'all can hear me well. So I want to spend a couple of minutes just describing who and what we are, and then we can kind of open up to how we fill the void or fill the need for IBM iClouds. But Abacus has been in business for since 2000. We have a brokerage heritage background. So what do? We do the IBM I. We are a platform-focused provider. We provide we provide cloud, product, services, and offerings around the IBM I. But we also do hardware, services, and we also buy IT. So we're really a full solution provider, and we've grown from a traditional broker's background to this full solution provider status. So if I kind of keep going here, really the emphasis of our conversation today, and I think the relationship and the offerings we bring to the table, is our IBM I platform solution focus. Basically, we argue we do the IBM I better than the rest, and we can do pretty much anything and everything up to the application level. So what does that mean? That means we have cloud, we have product, we have business continuity and services. So sometimes customers desire to go to the cloud, but they need to do it incrementally. Sometimes customers want to stay on premise because of requirements or operations cost or whatever reason, but we have solutions around both of those needs. So once again, we can bring you to the cloud for some or all, or we can talk about doing different offerings around customer premise, but we once again argue we can do the IBM better than the rest all the way up to the application level. So as we kind of go forward here, and this is a 5 or 6 deck PDF that we'll provide to everybody when the call is done. But how do we do it? We have a team of 15+ IBM I technical and sales specialists, and what does that mean? It means it's more than anybody I'm aware of in this space, and we're very focused. Resources, 30,000 square foot corporate headquarters. We have lab, we have warehouse, we have testing, we have engineers, we have people, we have logistics. We have a wide breadth of offerings. Data centers, we have multiple data centers that we run and manage ourselves. Some are owned and some are through partnerships, but we're in the data center business and we're aware of all the ins and outs of that. Support 24/7, 365. We have that available. Knock, phone, email, portal. You have access to us in all different ways. Before mentioned portal, we can get access to us a number of different ways. That's our preferred method, and that's the best way to get our fastest and best response from our customers. And certified. So we are an IBM MSP, we're IBM Gold, IBM Specialty Power, IBM Specialty Storage. So our solutions are packaged up with IBM and for IBM for our customers, and we take an independent approach to that. So why Abacus? A couple of regular words, but we feel these are important. We're focused, we have expertise, we provide variety, we're fast, and we bring value to the table. Partnerships, obviously we have a large partnership with IBM across the different boards, and we use a number of other offerings to help provide what we ultimately call in our cloud platform as a service, with degrees up into the mid-levels of operations management. If we talk about the Abacus IBM platform customers. We have a nice variance of industry, of region. I would say 95% of our customers are domestic, and they vary across all type of size and verticals. I would say manufacturing probably would be our number one vertical, and some of these customers you can see would fall into that, but a number of them across multiple arrays. So this is just a sample of names you may recognize. We've done the homework. So if you are looking at making a decision of going to the cloud or staying on premise, we've actually done the homework with and for many of our customers of saying, hey, we really view this from an environmental size. You can be a basic, a small, a medium, or a large environment customer, but ultimately what you really care about, or what most of the customers care about, is what's our total cost of ownership going from a premise to a cloud. So if you want to stay on premise, we can help support you with support services, operations, backup, DR as a service and whatnot, or we can roll you into our cloud. But ultimately, the cloud, if you are doing higher degrees of best practices, becomes more economical. And to be honest, that's not how it was 5 years ago. 5 years ago, I don't think the cloud was more economical, and people were still going to it. But now I think the economies of scale and the commoditization have really turned the cloud into an option that customers really work for. So if we kind of sum up the summary here is we're a full solution provider with an IBM platform focused. We can pretty much do you any which way but loose, and we look forward to working with the customer, each individual. I'd say 80% of the people have the same things or same things happening, where you have 20% unique, and we're willing and able to do both of those and help our customers figure out their environments for the short and the long term. So that's kind of the platform summary of who and what we are and how we do it. And I think there's probably, John, some questions and some things that we wanted to maybe potentially hit on as well.
Yes, sir. I guess we can take some questions now, and then maybe we'll take some additional questions a little bit later. So folks have we've seen the question app in the webinar, but yeah, please ask your question there. We see we have a few coming in. So let me take a few more, then I'll talk a bit more, and we can take some additional questions then. Okay, so we have some. So Mark, you want to take over the questions?
I was wondering if you wanted to do that poll question on Power 8 technology, the latest in IBM, John, okay. and then I've got a couple of questions from the audience for our panelists. So, are you currently on IBM Power 8 technology? Yes, or no, but plan to in the next calendar year? Or third, no plans currently to go on IBM Power 8?
So if we kind of look at that question, I think that's an interesting point, and I can kind of speak to that a little bit, guys. So if Power 8 is the latest and greatest from IBM, Power 9 has been released by IBM, but it's not going to be available from the AS400 perspective. I call it AS400 IBM I-Series. It goes by a bunch of different names. But from that perspective, the Power 9 is due to come out, we're expecting third quarter of next year. So if you are not on the Power 8, the assumption is we could help you get there by shifting to the cloud. That's the technology that we run on. But we also have Power 8, Power 7 Plus, Power 7, Power 6, Power 5 that we run all in our cloud. So different customers have different potential needs. But knowing that Power 9 is coming out in the near future, that's something that makes an interesting dilemma for customers trying to do an upgrade today. So if you're looking at doing an upgrade, shifting to a cloud would provide you the flexibility of getting to Power 9 down the road. Or if you're looking at premise, you may be potentially looking at making a purchase at the end of the cycle of a system. IBM has some discounts that they're offering to incent that, but at the same time, if there was potential time, I would maybe think about reviewing waiting for a Power 9. So Power 8 is the latest, and Power 7 and whatnot, it sounds like a lot of customers may still be on. Yes,
so the results of our poll, Patrick, kind of indicate that there's there's kind of a rift. 40% are currently on Power 8, another 13% plan to go there in the next year. and 47% do not have any plans to go on Power 8.
Yes,
So that
so if
speaks
you're
well to
looking at going to
your
Power 8,
inventory.
yeah, if you're looking at going to Power 8, that's pretty interesting because right now, like I said, you have this decision to make, and we can help you steer that. So as a business partner at the highest level from IBM, we can give you the recommendations of going from what you have today to Power 8, or maybe making that decision to go to wait till Power 9, depending on what the business requirements are. Or once again, if you shift to the cloud, you would be moving to a Power 8 technology. That's the latest and greatest we have today, and knowing that you have Power 9 upgrade options for no additional cost going forward. So there's some flexibility in the cloud that you may not have by staying premise. But it's a good visibility of what everybody's running on, which I see pretty much below 50% would be on non-Power 8. So that's what we see in the marketplace. So it seems to be pretty correctly trending.
Okay, so our audience is representative of the larger market as a whole. First audience question is why not go directly to IBM or AWS or Amazon for this kind of service? And I would assume, Patrick, you could field that one.
Another great question. Yeah. So from a standpoint, IBM does not actually host their own direct cloud, first of all. They have SoftLayer, who they had purchased, has clouds, but they're actually not IBM I focused. So from a standpoint, IBM does not present its own cloud and works with partners or MSPs like Abacus to provide that. And because the marketplace is a diminishing marketplace, our tagline is we want to help run the last 10,000 IBM I environments. And what does that mean? That means the translation it's declining. The footprint is there's arguably 100, 150,000 instances today. That number is arguably decreasing. So an AWS or a Google or Azure, those companies don't have enough customer base to target this. So they don't have a cloud in this area as well. So you have to come to a provider like Abacus as an MSP who has a specialty that can also complement your other maybe commodity and other specialty cloud needs. So ultimately it becomes a hybrid environment, which we see as the new normal today.
Cool. Great. Another question is there an impact on my CA2E license if I go this route? I'll give you a perspective from business development. That the CA rating system is going to depend on your developer environment, as you know, and if you do change hardware, it may or may not trigger a license event. If the rating and CA's estimation is a higher one, then it will. If it's the same or lower, then there isn't an impact on the license. John, do you have something technically to add to that license situation?
No, I think you pretty much summed it up. That if your license is for a certain tier and you don't increase that tier, then you're not going to have a problem with transferring the license. A lot of folks, if you're not on support, maybe that would be interesting. If you're not on support but you want to get back on support, it might make real sense to move to a hosted cloud environment and put your license there, because probably you could put just the development environment on like Abacus and get a smaller license from CA than you would maybe on your production box that you have currently running. So maybe you'd be able to save some money there to get back on support by doing Abacus.
Okay. Next question is
maybe Patrick have some other licensing comments in general, because he's more experienced in that area.
Yeah, that's a great question. Application drives everything down towards the infrastructure, right? So obviously making that application decision, which John and team can help you facilitate, one. Two, from a standpoint of ownership, from what we provide in a cloud, you'll get the OS, you'll get the non-operating licenses, you'll get the user licenses. We provide all of that into a partition or slice for the power customers. So we take care of all the day-to-day operations, non-operating, and all the underlying operations and application costs from that side. And then once again, knowing how it's going to directly affect your primary application and some activities around that. So I think the good point is we have all of the day-to-day operations costs covered at an operations expense to the customers.
A follow-on question to that. So what size customer would need either a Tier 2 or Tier 3 data center, Patrick?
Yeah, so Another good question. So from a standpoint on the type of environment that you're looking for, we do a number of different environments. If you're on an older version system, we can put you into what we call our traditional hosting offering. So that could handle customers that aren't current or on older versions. I think some people said they're a version 5X and whatnot. We can facilitate that, and the reason would be to do that because you have a serial number conflict potentially. But if we are going to be talking about getting into our enterprise cloud, you're going to want to be at a certain tiered data center, which we have all of the proper tiered and SaaS ratings and all the proverbial security checkboxes you're going to look for, and that means you're a best of breed, best of purpose offering. So you don't have to worry about those responsibilities going forward for customer premise. So we take care of all that with and for you in our cloud and the data centers that we run in as well.
Another one here, probably for you, John, would be, do you have any CA2E or CA Plex customers that have moved entirely to a public cloud like AWS or similar cloud offering?
Yeah, I guess the short answer is no, we don't have any that moved entirely. And the reason is that most of our customers have IBMIs on the back end, and they're not ready to completely get rid of it. Really, they have enterprise applications running there, and that's a really difficult proposition. What we have seen is folks that have moved parts of their applications over. We have a success story on a website about a company in Louisiana that's in global logistics. They had a requirement to transition an application from something that ran locally for Louisiana to something that ran globally in different locations on Southeast Asia and South America and Europe. So they moved their warehousing and distribution application to AWS by generating Java from CA Plex. And that worked quite well for them. They're able to really reduce their operations expense and downtime by shifting that responsibility to the cloud hosting provider. And they still have an IBMI that runs locally, but that just does a collection of data type operations. They're able to manage a global operation from a pretty small staff by using AWS. So in that case, I think it works. I don't think that moving everything to the cloud is something you do in a year or two, or that's probably a 5-year project, which Abacus, I think, will be a part of that, and we can also help with that if that's the direction you're headed.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Last, the one question coming in was, what is going to be different with my CA2E system if I move to the cloud? It's kind of a follow-on to what you were just talking about there. What would be different with your 2E system?
I don't think there would be anything different. I think it would be basically a non-event. I think Abacus might talk about this and what maybe the transition process would be to move to their data center. But as I understand it, what we've seen with the other customers who've gone this route is it's pretty much a non-event because Abacus has things planned out pretty well. Maybe Patrick, you could elaborate.
Yeah, I can kind of take that a step further. So from a standpoint of what's going to be different, the goal is none. Obviously, there's planning and work that goes into it. So how do you get to a cloud? I think that might help answer the question a little bit more detail. So if we were to agree that you wanted to go to the Abacus cloud, first of all, let's make sure you're a prime candidate at a current version, right? If you're at a current version, we can then work towards getting you tested and vetted. So we get your data and we actually present it in a test cloud, and you then establish network, you establish connectivity, so all your users would have access. We confirm that all is working well with and for you. Then we would have a window that we would have an outage window. It could be minutes or it could be days, depending on what the requirements are. We would then take that data, bring it to the updated, we take your data, we'd update it to the now test cloud that we'd shift into a production. We then would have you, we convert you and run you and then test, go live. Then you would open up to your users to run business as usual. Every once in a while, you may have a printer or something that's not working. You may have a user that has some access. We're very used to that, and we can help solve that in the short term. And then in reality, once you're in the cloud and your application's working and running, you are business as usual, and then you have a greater, larger team and environment to work from, and you have expandability, flexibility, all at a regular operation cost. So there is a planned project that helps you get there. We're very versed in that and very thorough in that process. But once you're there, you're operating, and then I think you have a flexibility to do some things at the infrastructure level and probably at the application level that you maybe didn't have before.
Okay. Patrick, I have another kind of a tactical question about how does IBM and VM or Docker environment, how is that going to exist on the cloud?
So let me try to understand that better. So how does the IBM environment exist in the cloud, or what was the?
Well, I guess how they coexist.
Oh, okay. So how does a typical customer for us is going to have 3 or 4 IBMIs. They're going to have a production, they're going to have a dev, a test, and a DR, something of that nature. Maybe multiple different applications running production. Then they're going to have half a dozen Windows environments that are going to be accompanying. And those are going to be very intertwined with the AS400 traditionally, and they're going to need to reside very close. So we do have a very robust Windows cloud as well, and its purpose is to support our IBMI customers. So like I said, typical customer for us is going to have 3 or 4 IBMI environments with maybe half a dozen window intertwined latency concern applications surrounding it. And from that perspective, we take that all on. Then I think the hybrid becomes the new normal. If you have commodity Windows workloads and things of that nature, I think there's probably other providers that can actually probably do more of an infrastructure as a service offering for those. And if they're not latency concerned or intertwined with AS400, let's bring those to another provider that could probably do a more commodity cost option. So ultimately, what are we providing? We're providing platform as a service options, and that includes the IBMI and whatever accompanying Windows workloads that would surround it.
One more for you. Is the Power 8, does it have a GUI limitation?
Now I'm going to probably fall off my technical cliff here.
Okay. I can't answer that one either.
Yeah. So we've got a whole technical team behind me. As an account executive and someone who leads our managed services practice, I get pretty technical, but I get you normally to the 10-yard line, and then we have our technical team punch it through. But that also brings up a good point of we have resources, that 15-plus technical resources is very deep and wide in the IBMI, and we're also diverse in from a scope of age, which is traditionally I would say an older demographic in the IBMI space. We have variances in almost every tier of age that helps us keep and stay young, which will help us support our customers going forward too.
Mm-hmm. One general question here about when you say cloud, you mean accessing the IBMI on your premises or ours? And talk a little bit about that, about some of the options that there are for people moving in this direction.
Yeah, so I don't think everybody just cannonballs into the cloud, right? You do it in steps. So if you're thinking about making a refresh, you may want to start with a backup as a service, DR as a service, maintenance, operations management. You stay on customer premise. We do those operations with you remotely and for you, so we can basically complement what you're doing today. And then when that cycle happens down the road, whether it's in a year for Power 9 or 3 or 5 years, whenever it's for Power 10, you want to say, hey, I don't want to do the hardware refresh. I actually just want to go to the cloud. We could then facilitate that. What's interesting, I think what we try to show on that sample pricing is, all things being equal, you could probably run it cheaper and better in our cloud than you can on premise. But at the same time, not all customers are ready or willing to do that, because you could be remote, you could have certain type of regulations that require you to be on premise. And if that's the case, we can augment what you're doing today, do the same set of services locally at your premise, and we can run in those the AS400 environment for you going forward.
Mm-hmm. So once a customer's on the cloud, how do they scale their IBMI from that point forward?
Yeah, so traditionally, if you buy an IBMI, so let's say you're going to buy a new Power 8, what you're going to look at it traditionally and say, okay, what's my undetermined need? I'm going to over-purchase. And so let's say you're going to increase, your traditional purchase would be you increase 30 to 40% of whatever you had today. So you're planning for the inevitable or the unplanned event. So in the cloud, what we try to do is we try to give you what you need today, and then you have virtual scalability. So we present our processor in slices, and you can increase your quantities as much as you need. Our storage is virtual enterprise SAN, so all flash storage arrays, so you can increase by gigabyte. Our backup is the same situation. Networking, you would parlay off our existing networking. So the moral of the story is if you go to the cloud, I think you have more flexibility, more enterprise options, but also you can scale for what you need down the road. So you don't have to plan or over-purchase, which I think has some financial bean counters in the back end, always challenging how big of a system you need. You can just buy for what you need today and know you have the scale to go if you have growth or you purchase or you have a new acquisition. We can facilitate all of that.
Mm-hmm. Great. That kind of does it for our audience applied questions. Some really insightful ones there. We do have one remaining poll question. We'll see if John, if we can get to that last question. Here we go. Our last poll question would be: how concerned are you about IBM operation staffing? Either first, I'm very concerned that some critical staff have already retired, or I'm somewhat concerned because we do have planned retirements within the next 12 months or so, or lastly, we're not concerned. So if our audience could check in for this last question, that'd be great. So interestingly, only 7% are quite concerned, and about 20%, 21% are somewhat, because they've got people coming up. But the vast majority of people here, 2/3 to 3/4, are saying that they're not concerned about that. So they've got things covered on the staffing side. Okay, this really concludes the poll question, and we've got one more screen to pop up to the audience about basically about today's activity. And so what do you think is about rehosting? I hope that you get to get exposed to some things and perhaps some concepts that you might not be particularly familiar with, especially on the IBM I. So basically takeaways are that hosting makes sense, a lot of sense during a variety of different modernization processes. It allows you to focus on new application development, allows you to spin up dev and test environments really efficiently. And combining Abacus as an MSP with CM First can be a good solution, because you've got Abacus taking the hosting, and then we can handle all other aspects of your CA2 repository, as well as data, your databases, and all of your IBM I services and so forth that are related to TUI and your other code bases on the IBM I. So that concludes our presentation and webinar today. Thank you very much, and I'll be getting out copies of our content to you shortly. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, John. And thank you, audience members.